Our first teller comes to us from Fairview, North Carolina. She has a real story sense deep inside. So please help me welcome Christine Phillips Westfeldt.
Wow. It's a full house, isn't it? Wow. So tonight I'll be telling 2 short stories. And the first story is a personal story about a woman and her dog. Her name is Zozo. She was a tawny-coated, brown-eyed, long-eyelashed, 4-legged, 51 pounds and 14 years old. I bought her for $11 when she was this big from the Madison County shelter. And she was a rascal. Why, she grew and her legs grew and she could run like the wind. I used to love to watch her run across the big lawn I had in Balsam, North Carolina, where I used to live. She would run back and forth, back and forth. I had 17 acres enclosed, fenced in. 17 acres was not enough for that nose. She would go down the gravel driveway, look back to make sure I wasn't looking, go out the gate into the wooded neighborhood and get on a mole and stay on that mole for hours at a time. Sometimes I'd have to call her back. Zozo, come home. Zozo, come home. Sometimes she would and sometimes she wouldn't. So I'd leave the gate open till she came home. She was the fastest and the most nosy of the 3 of my dogs. Zozo's Sam in spirit. Well, Zozo got a little older, I got a little older, and she couldn't run as fast anymore, but she could hunt, and she still hunted and she still wandered. I moved to Fairview, North Carolina, where I live now. I put in an electric fence, and she knew that after a few months that fence didn't work. She ignored it, went right down, and kept hunting. She hunted and she hunted till she was 14 years old. In about March of this year, though, she stopped hunting. She still had a nose, but she couldn't wander as much anymore. In April of this year, she got an infection, a kidney infection. And it went away, but it came back, and I knew that something was wrong. On April 28th, it was a Thursday of 2016 this year, I got up very early and I went next door to my bedroom in my office. She was laying in the bed where she always laid. And I crouched down, and there she was, just shivering and flinching and shivering and flinching, and I was so worried she was in pain. I got up and I walked out into the living room and I called Beth Marchitelli. She's a hospice vet. I call her the Rainbow Bridge vet. I'd called her 2 weeks before, but Zozo wasn't ready. I could feel Beth nodding over the phone. 11:30 or 3? I said 3, Beth. I have to make absolutely sure. 3 it is. I'll be there. I went back into the office to Zozo's bed, and she was still flinching and shivering, and I sort of crouched down, and I kneeled down, really, and I gave her hands-on healing. It's just something I do, and I got up and walked out through the living room into the kitchen. Not 20 seconds later, she was up, walking briskly through the living room into the kitchen. I opened the kitchen door. She walked out the kitchen door, onto the porch, down the steps, took a left on the driving area, and went back into the bush at the back of the house. She went under that bush, a camellia bush. That was Sam's place, my only other dog left. She only stayed a few moments. I was watching, and she got up again, took a right, went past those porch steps, took another right in front of the porch, and took another right under the porch. about 20 feet back. It was overcast that day, so it was dark. I could hardly see her. But I knew she didn't want me to move her. Zozo never went under the front porch. So I left her there, would check on her. I'd go in the house and come back and check on her and go in the house and come back. At one point, I took my silver tarp and I lay it all the way over on that red clay dirt right up next to her little body. And I laid there right next to her, waiting for Beth to come. My friend Kathy helps me on Thursdays, and she was there, and she listened for Beth. I heard Beth's car come up the driveway. I heard her car door open and close. And I called to her, "Beth, over here. Beth, under the front porch." Both Beth and Kathy came over and crawled on that silver tarp and came right up to Zozo. And we circled her. There we were, just 4 girls. Beth looked at me and she looked at Zozo and she said, "Are her paws cold?" And I just gently held her paws and I said, "Gee, they're very cold." "She's in shock," said Beth. "It's time, Christine." I could feel my eyes well up with tears because I knew what was going to happen next. 4 months to the day, 4 months before, December 28th, my 85-pound boxer mix Spirit had gone over the Rainbow Bridge. Beth had helped him over. So Beth took out the first shot. It was to help Zozo relax and drift away, and she gave her the first shot, and the tears kept coming, and she did relax, and she did drift away. And then she pulled out the second shot, and she looked at me, and she gave her the second shot, and the heart stopped. And just as the heart stopped, I looked up, and it's as if the sun had burst through the clouds and shone right through the cracks in the porch. Like Zozo was telling me, "You did the right thing." We stayed there for a moment and looked at that lifeless little body. Then I put a blanket, one of her favorite, under, and we pulled it over that silver tarp, pulled it all the way out to the open air and up and put it on the porch. There were no railings. And again, I looked at her little body, and the spirit had gone. Zozo's spirit had gone over that Rainbow Bridge. I could see her running fast as the wind over that bridge. Beth took some flowers from the woods and put them on her neck, on her tawny-coated body, and then we picked up the blanket with her body in it, and we brought it over to Beth's car and put it in the back of the car. I beckoned Sam to come over and just sniff her. I wanted to make sure. I think he knew. That was his best friend, his best 4-legged friend. So he did sniff her, and then he turned away and went about his business. So different from how we humans do. Beth closed the back of the car, and we walked over to the driver's side, and she turned to me and gave me a hug and said, "I hope I don't see you for a very long time." She opened the door, got in the car, and drove down that driveway. I would have Zozo's ashes in a few weeks. And I turned around and went towards the house. I knew I would miss Zozo. We miss our 4-leggeds. We just do, don't we? That tawny-coated, big brown-eyed, long-eyelashed, precious little hound. Her name is Zozo. This second tale, it's a traditional tale, and traditional tales are often handed down over the ages orally and then written down and then told and then written down again. There are usually many versions of a traditional tale. And this version, I want to thank Margaret Reed MacDonald for introducing me to it. It's a Chinese folk tale. It takes place somewhere in the mountains of mainland China. High in a temple, high in the mountains of China, there was a student, a diligent student, practicing his calligraphy on a big piece of white blank paper. There was an inkstone that had a little ledge and a dip where the ink could go, and he could dip his brush and practice for hours at a time. And so he did. He practiced so long, so late into the night, he became sleepy, and he put his brush down, and his head went on the table, and he fell asleep. In his sleep, he had a dream. It was so real. He dreamt of this maiden, this beautiful maiden in a green silk shimmering dress. But the maiden was trembling. She was trembling all over. And she looked at him and said, "Save me, save me." She pleaded with him. And then she vanished. It was early morning by that time, and the student awoke with a start and looked everywhere for her. Surely she was there. The dream was so real. He even looked out into the open window to see if she had flown out the window. She was nowhere to be seen. Then he heard a buzzing noise, a buzz, a buzzing, buzzing, buzzing noise, and he looked over towards the window, and there was this big spider web, and this little green shimmering bee was entangled in the web. And there was a large, hungry spider getting closer and closer to that web. The student jumped up and broke the web and ran the spider away. Then he gently came over and gently picked up the little bee and put it right on that ledge of the inkstone. After a few moments, the little bee began to recover, move its little legs, its little 6 legs, and its wings. Then it went down into the inkwell. There was very little ink in there because he had been practicing calligraphy all night. And then this little bee, she hopped onto the blank writing paper that he had put there before he went to sleep the night before. And he waddled, and he waddled, and he danced, and he waddled. Oh no, it was a she that waddled, and she waddled, and she danced, and she waddled. He was just stunned and delighted with her. And then she was done. And she spread her wings and she flew out the window. The student looked down and he saw that with her inky little feet, she had written the Chinese character for thank you. Thank you.